So welcome back to the Monterey Bay Aquarium. As we start our reopening walkthrough training, we want to give you a look at what the visitor path looks like throughout the aquarium, where the guide stations are, what exhibits are open and closed, what services are available. We'll be doing all that over the next few minutes with this video. And we're going to start right out front here because this is where the guest visit starts. Again, it's all timed ticket sales, all online sales. So when people arrive, they will queue up according to the time for their ticket. So the 10 o'clock line might go down Cannery Row here, and the 10:30 line may go up David Avenue here. And then we'll alternate back and forth so we can queue people up by their time of entry. We've marked the sidewalks, so they'll all be 6 feet apart. Staff out here will make sure everybody has their masks, that they have their tickets ready to go. They've got their parking taken care of so they don't have to rush out to feed the meter because there is no re-entry at this point. So we'll take care of those things out front, and then when it is time for people to enter, we'll allow them in a few at a time into our main ticketing area to scan their tickets and then launch them off on their aquarium visit. So let's see what happens after this. So guests will come in through the main doors into ticketing. There'll be a very limited line in here to make sure everybody is the proper distance apart. And then one at a time, or one group at a time, they will come up to one of our stations here. All the tickets are already purchased and either pre-printed or people will just have them on their smartphone. Either way, they can hold that up in front of the acrylic. We will scan right through the acrylic, and once their tickets have been scanned, then on they go into the aquarium. So once guests have had their ticket scanned, they're admitted into the aquarium. Their next stop is here in our WOW area, welcoming, orientation, and wayfinding. And we'll have a staff member here, at least at the onset. They'll be responsible for greeting guests and making sure they downloaded a copy of our digital visitor guide, which is essentially the map of the aquarium, and answering any questions and helping people decide which direction they're going to go, because they have a choice up here of turning right and starting down the path through the open sea galleries, or turning to their left and starting down the path to the Ocean's Edge galleries. And they can also go out on the deck at any point. So this is kind of a free flow area. People may just want to head directly to the restrooms, or they might want to see the sea otters first. Hopefully we'll have a lot of guests going out on the deck also to see what's going on out on the bay. So all that happens here, and we'll have somebody helping to answer those questions and direct people accordingly. So the information center will be closed initially, and we'll see how that works out over time. The information that's usually posted above the information center here, of course, with all of our programs canceled, that schedule won't be here. So there's some basic, again, reminders on face coverings and sanitizing your hands and proper physical distancing. We may have an image of the aquarium floor plan, the map here, for people to reference, maybe even take a photograph if they want with their cell phone for future reference. The other functions that happen here, lost and found, will be moved over to our members and tour desk. We're not stamping hands for re-entry because with time ticketing there is no re-entry. And with small groups, we're not doing wristbanding either. We're not sure that really lost children should be that much of a challenge right now. So most of the functions that happen here have been discontinued for the time being. We may bring those back over time, and of course, as we're able to start adding more volunteers into the mix over time, we're hoping to bring our information center volunteers back as well. But they may be stationed in different places, helping with that ever-needed information, answers to common questions, wayfinding. All that continues to be a need with our guests, but we may be in different places doing that rather than focused right here. So we have now over 40 hand sanitizer stations throughout the aquarium. You can't walk more than 20 feet without seeing the next hand sanitizer station. And again, at any point during your visit, or also instruct guests, they're welcome to sanitize their hands. Take a little bit of this, make sure that they get their palms, the backs of their hands between their fingers, get their thumbs and your fingertips and underneath your fingernails. All of this is part of effective sanitizing for your hands. And you keep rubbing until it's all absorbed. Once this is all evaporated, you know you got a good kill of any bacteria and viruses on your hands. You don't need to dry them off with a paper towel. You'll see these blue reminders everywhere throughout the aquarium. No language, but universal symbols, again reminding us about proper distancing, keeping our face mask or facial coverings on at all times, and sanitizing our hands frequently. And these are throughout the aquarium just to remind us all of these very important practices. So here at the entrance to the Ocean's Edge galleries is one of two checkpoints we have for guests. So guests that decide to start their visit on this path now are starting a one-way path through here. We'll have stanchions across here and a staff member that will be here keeping an eye on how many people are in front of the kelp forest, as well as staying in radio contact with other staff around through the galleries. And we can meter people through to make sure that we're not sending so many people through that it's starting to create a crowd in any one spot. We want to make sure that we're maintaining effective distancing throughout the galleries. So we can hold people here if we need to, and if there's much of a wait, then our guests will actually queue up 6 feet apart down through the Hovden cannery exhibits here. And we'll allow them in and as traffic permits. So we're going to direct our guest traffic on this one-way path with quite a few stanchions throughout the aquarium. There's a really important skill we all need to have, and that is how to quickly remove a stanchion in the case of an emergency, especially in evacuation, because these can be an impediment to people moving through the space and a trip hazard. So everybody needs to practice. If you have to clear a stanchion out of the way, you just have to lift up on the ribbon, let that retract, and grab the stanchion and roll it out of the way. And then that path is cleared and people can continue through. All right, let's head towards the kelp forest. So here at the kelp forest, we don't have a staff person or volunteer stationed initially. Later on, as we start to add more volunteers to shifts, then this would be a great place to have a guide stationed. We have some considerations about spacing here. We can put maybe 5 or 6 groups of people around the kelp forest and still maintain proper distancing. The benches will be closed other than the first bench here, and then we can put a guide somewhere in this vicinity. If necessary, we can stanchion back a larger area so that the guide has that 6-foot distance between themselves and the guest. We'll see how our guests behave and if that's necessary. If so, we've got stanchions available to be able to do that. There is no kelp forest feeding narration for a while because that draws a crowd, and that's the last thing we want to do with effective physical distancing. So we'll be canceling the shows. We don't want to draw a lot of attention to this exhibit, but we want people to be able to stop by and see the kelp forest and answer any questions they may have when we're able to put somebody here. At the same time, now that we're on our one-way path, some guests may decide to go through the deep reef areas and look at their favorite Pacific giant octopus, and they can do that as well, and they may backtrack here to look at the kelp forest. So we see a little bit of circulation in this area, but overall guests need to keep continuing this direction. The stairs over here will be stanchioned off so that there is no traffic upstairs. It's all pretty much a controlled one-way path from here. The Monterey Bay Habitats exhibit is another one of those stations that won't be manned at first. Again, during our pilot phase, we don't have the staff and volunteers to dedicate to this space. And hopefully after our pilot phases, we start to add more volunteers into the mix, we'll be able to put somebody here. And again, we'll look at proper placement so that someone can be here, they can interact with our guests, but we can maintain a safe distance around them. We won't narrate any feedings that go on here for the time being, again, because that tends to draw a crowd. So we're not going to schedule or announce any feedings throughout the aquarium, although we're still going to continue to feed the fishes and other animals. But we don't want to do anything that is going to draw a lot of people into one spot and violate our social distancing. You'll start to notice in the aquarium we've eliminated a lot of interactives, again for health and safety reasons. So at the Shale Reef Look Down exhibit, the magnifiers, the floating magnifiers, have been removed for the time being. And you'll also notice that the wharf piling where you used to be able to reach through the barnacles has also been removed. At the Real Cost Cafe, we'll have the velvet ropes here to keep people back at a safe distance, so they won't be sitting here and ordering things on screen, but they can still watch the program, and this is set on an automatic loop where the staff is still interacting with each other, still talking about sustainable seafood, and we'll be the audience, but we won't be ordering things in the Real Cost Cafe. So here at the aviary is the first of our hard stations for guides. We need a guide here at the entrance to the aviary to perform several key tasks. First of all, looking into the aviary to see if it feels like it's starting to get a little crowded and people are getting too close to each other, then we want to meter traffic going in. So we may hold up people, have them queue on the penguin feet that will be here through the Coastal Wetlands Gallery, and hold up traffic until we see things clear out a little bit, and then we can let the next group in. In addition to that, we'll have some wipes here, so perhaps while you're holding up traffic, you can hit the push bars on the revolving door, maybe even a couple of the other surfaces if it looks like people have touched them. So we maintain some cleanliness here. And then we'll also have a hand sanitizer station here. So while people are waiting, they can sanitize their hands, and that way they've knocked down any germs or viruses on their hands before they push on the revolving door. So, and we may again demonstrate proper hand washing technique or hand sanitizing technique here. And finally, we have a chance to tell people what they're going to see when they enter the aviary. So looking for the birds, looking at the dune plants that walk really across the dunes from Elkhorn Slough to the shore of Monterey Bay. We don't have a chance to explain that to our audience very often, so it'll be an opportunity to prepare them for what they're going to see as they walk through the aviary. If people have strollers here, we can invite them to park their strollers around the side here in the Rocky Shores Gallery. So there's a variety of things we can do with our guests here. So we'll have penguin feet on the floor in different places where we want people to queue up if queuing is necessary, and they'll be 6 feet apart. So this will be everybody's signal. You and your group can stand here on the penguin feet, and you'll be a safe distance away from every place else. So this will be a standard fixture where we have queuing. Our second hard station for guides is actually inside the aviary. So as guests come through the revolving door, we'll have another hand sanitizer station here, so if they touch the door, they're welcome to sanitize their hands again. We might also let them know there's a hand sanitizer station when they exit the aviary, just to the right of the revolving door, and they can clean their hands again. We need to have a guide inside here with the birds and the guests, just to make sure everybody is getting along okay, but we also want to make sure we can maintain proper distancing between ourselves and the guests. So this might be one good location for guides, is here by the Midden exhibit, where you can keep an eye on the guests and the spacing. You might be able to signal to the guide that is metering people into the aviary to let them know when they can send more guests in. You can answer guest questions here as long as the guests keep a proper distance, and if that becomes a problem, again, we are prepared to put stanchions around you here so that you've got a good space between yourself and the guests that are coming through the aviary. Another possible location for the guide inside the aviary is right here in this little bend by the duck pond. You can see we've removed the periscopes for the time being, and you're a good distance away from guests that are at the railing. So if everybody is staying close to the railing, this might be another good position for a guide. if you have too many guests getting too close here, again, we may have to back up over towards the kitchen midden area. Our storage box for the aviary currently is just by the entry point. That may change over time, but just a reminder that we do have a radio in here, but the jackets that we're used to putting on in a cold day are not going to be in here because we can't share clothing. So this will be a spot for the radio, and there's a towel in here in case you have a bird that escapes and you need to round it up, but no foul weather jackets in here. So in the aviary, it narrows down here, but this is still about 7 feet width. So if for some reason you need to move through the aviary, if you stay close to this wall and the guests are close to the flip books and the railing over there, then you should be able to safely pass people. We've removed a lot of interactives, but these flip books will stay, and we'll make sure that these get sanitized regularly by staff making the cleaning rounds through here. So the next hard station for guides after the guide outside the aviary, inside the aviary, is here around the Rocky Shores Gallery. The Rocky Shore Touch Pool will be closed initially. We may be able to reopen it at some point in the future. We'll have some water in the touch pool and maybe some seaweed, but nothing to attract a lot of attention. We really don't want people touching the counters and the water over there for the time being. The same thing at the bat ray pool. We need to keep people stanchioned back from the counters, so there will be stanchion ribbons running across here and across the back, so guests can get close, but they can't actually go over and touch the bat rays for the time being. Hopefully that'll change over time. That creates a nice space for guides to stand either inside this curve of the bat ray pool or the other curve over here. And again, we're doing more of the host and hostess role. If the bat rays are doing something people can see, we can certainly talk about that. But people may have questions about where do I go next? More wayfinding questions. I might ask people, is there anything you saw in the aviary or in the Monterey Bay Habitats exhibit that I can tell you about? We have a chance to pick up questions about things people have seen leading up to this point. Might point out the hand sanitizer stations, so if they push the door, the revolving door to get out of the aviary, again, they can sanitize their hands. And then directing people, because from here they have an option to go out on the deck and look at the outside of the wave crash exhibit, or they can actually walk under the wave crash exhibit, or they can continue on towards the coastal stream on their one-way path. And now we are headed from the first floor up towards the second floor. So let's head on up now to the splash zone from here. Here inside splash zone, because this is a high-touch area, we've closed off much of the exhibit. So you can see some of the coral reef community exhibits, and past that, then we'll continue on to where the penguins are. As well, both restrooms are open here. Always an important question from our guests. Our penguins are all here. They're not wearing masks and they're not practicing proper physical distancing, but what the heck, they are still one of our big attractions here at the aquarium, and we're so happy to see them again. We won't have scheduled penguin feedings, and we won't do narrations here at the penguin exhibit, again, because we don't want to attract a crowd in this area. Within this area as well, there are just a few interactives left for kids. The scopes have been removed to look out over Hopkins Marine Station, and we'll see what we wind up doing with the benches here also, again, because we don't really want to attract a crowd to stay in this area. The Splash Zone store will remain closed. And the hand stamp stations, or the stamp stations where we made those bookmarks have all been removed around the aquarium as well. Again, because it's just an interactive with too much touching there. Stanchions will stretch across from the elevators over to the wall here, so anybody coming up the elevators again will be directed through the splash zone, and people exiting the splash zone then will be directed through here into the kelp gallery. I know. So initially when we open, we will stanchion back the kelp touch pool here on this second floor as well. There will be stanchions that keep people at least arm's distance back from the counter here because you have health concerns about too many people touching the counter. We're not concerned about the water or the animals, but the actual counters themselves. But that gives us an opportunity, with the crowd stanchioned back a little bit, to actually talk about things that we don't see very often, like all of the animals that live here in the lower part of the kelp touch pool. So we have some incredible specimens of leather stars and ochre stars and giant spine stars in here. There's a young wolf eel, a young spiny lobster, and our favorite little giant sea bass that started out about thumb size here a little while back and now is up to about this size and is making its home in here. So lots of things that we can point out here that don't get to see our guests all that often, because this is usually just a wall of legs here with everybody that's looking at animals up here. In addition, we have animals in our macro video tank. We can talk about what we're seeing on the screen there. So this is a hard guide station here, and we'll have one guide here. They can operate in this area and interpret what guests are seeing through here. The last leg of our path through the ocean's edge is across the bridge over to the other building. So this marks the end of the one-way path through the ocean's edge galleries. It delivers us at the beginning of the open sea gallery, and at this point the guests, if they want to go back downstairs, use the restrooms, visit the cafe, the sea otters, they can go down the stairs. We'll also have this escalator in operation so guests can come up the escalator to start their visit to the open sea if they want to start here first, or continue on after having been down in the marine mammals gallery. So this is the official start to the next leg of the trip through the aquarium.